Autism is so often only described by its negative traits, the social deficits, the issues with emotional regulation, the lack of empathy, which isn't a thing that autism causes, and the list goes on and on. However, since the autistic community has been getting larger and louder, we're seeing more lists stating the positives of being autistic. But the lists that state the negatives are still more common. We need to shift the focus from how autism negatively affects not only autistic people, but the people around them, and look at the positives. Because of this strong focus on the negatives, we have people begging for a cure and committing filicide. Check out my previous live stream if you want to learn more about that depressing topic. You don't see lists of the negative aspects of being neurotypical because being neurotypical is seen as the norm. It's literally in the name, neurotypical. And because it's seen as typical, nobody analyzes neurotypicals to find negative traits to put on a list. But I assure you that those negative traits do exist. I'm not going to make a list or anything. I'm not really one for neurotypical bashing. I'm just trying to make a point. The only reason why people describe autism by its negative traits is because it's easier to see the negatives of things that are different. So let's go over the positives instead and show people that different doesn't mean bad. And Robbie, I agree with you. Can we start by bringing more attention to petitions to ban meltdown videos? Yes. There is a petition. You'll have to look it up. I don't have a link for it right now. But yeah, is these videos that show autistics having meltdowns, and it's usually children. Let's see, is that the one? I believe that's the one. My partner looks like my partner's going to be putting that link in the chat.
And I'll be sending it over so it can go at the bottom of the video once it's over.
Excellent. So yeah. Thank you, Robbie, for bringing that up. So, on to the positives. I think one trait that can sometimes be seen as a negative, but should be seen as a positive, would be our honesty. Our tact isn't always the greatest, but you can't say we're not honest. It's common for neurotypicals to hide certain truths for a multitude of reasons. From what I can gather, a lot of the time it's because they're worried about making a situation awkward or that they'll hurt someone's feelings. Saying that they're okay when they're not, or saying an outfit looks good when it doesn't. Although here in China, such white lies aren't really a thing. I wonder if it's just more of a Western thing.
I would suspect so because it's hilarious when my students meet me for the first time and say, "Hey, oh, you're fat."
Either way, it took time for my partner to realize that when I said I was fine, or that something they did was fine, I meant it.
By the way, that word fine in terms of neurotypicals is code speak for something really isn't fine, but I just don't want to talk about it.
Yeah, with you having to deal with plenty of passive aggressive people in your life, I have a feeling that it was a pretty drastic change for you to have somebody always say what they meant.
Just a little bit.
So, if an autistic person says that your hair looks good or your singing sounds nice, they're probably not just giving you an empty compliment. To expand upon this, autistics also rarely play mind games or have ulterior motives. Keep in mind that I'm talking about autistics who don't have co occurring personality disorders, since I have come across some autistics online who are fans of playing mind games. With that aside, we autistics don't play with people to get what we want, mostly because we don't understand it ourselves, which can sometimes make us the victims of mind games. But we're here to focus on the positives. There are times when my partner and I are invited to a social gathering and I'm not up for going, so I tell them to go without me. This isn't me playing tricks. This is me wanting them to go have fun, to not let my inability to go stop them from going. They know that if I'm in such a state that I need them home with me, I'll tell them that. Oh, geez. Okay. I remember this one time. Sorry. Bit of a tangent, but it's related to this topic. I used to have this friend, and when a few other friends and I wanted to go see a movie, I asked my now ex friend if she wanted to come along, and she said no. So we went to the movie without her. Later, she called me up upset that I hadn't pursued her. She was upset that I had simply taken her word and left it at that. I asked why she didn't just say that she wanted to come, and she said something along the lines of, I don't know, sometimes it's just fun to be pursued. I was so confused. Heck, I'm still confused. This person was very much a manipulator. I'm sure you can guess why she's my ex friend. I think it's this inability to understand why people lie and manipulate that makes us have a stronger sense of justice. Some people chalk it up to us being more black and white thinkers, but not all of us are. I know that I often find myself thinking in shades of gray. Not like the book. Get your mind out of the poorly written gutter.
And go to the much better written gutter that you can find almost anywhere else.
Exactly. I think it has to do with the fact that we don't understand why there are injustices in the world, so we're more opposed to it. For me, the thought of pushing someone down in life just to bring myself up sickens me. I can't understand how someone would actively make someone else's life worse and just be okay with it. I think it's why it's harder for us to thrive in a competitive work environment. It's more difficult for us to screw over a coworker to reap the benefits. And this sort of thing is why I'm always baffled by those who think that autistics have no empathy. Of course, then there was this study that said that autistics care too much. It was this study done in Brazil, and in it, autistics and neurotypicals had to accept or decline two different conditions. One, fund a good cause at their own expense, or two, support a bad cause in exchange for monetary gain. They had to choose both privately and publicly. Autistics would decline the second bad one, both privately and publicly. But neurotypicals would accept the second one privately more often, but decline it publicly. Now, keep in mind, this is just one study. Don't think that this represents all neurotypicals. I know plenty of selfless and kind hearted neurotypicals. But in this study, the fact that autistics were less likely to compromise their morals, even in a private setting, was seen as a bad thing. Probably explains why so many of us have so much trouble in a capitalist society. From there, let's move to another moral trait of ours. And that is that we're more likely to be accepting of others. Now, I'm not saying that autistics can't be bigoted. I'm just saying that we're less likely to be, at least when compared to others. We're less likely to judge someone because of their looks, social class, sexuality, gender, etc., etc., etc. We care about who you are as a person. I don't know if this is because of our empathy or because we know what it's like to be judged and how much it hurts. We know what it's like to be ostracized for being different, so perhaps we're less likely to do it to others. However, I think the most driving factor behind this is our lack of interest with societal rules. Yes, some of us mask, but that's less to do with wanting to fit in and more to do with avoiding ridicule. We're more likely to ignore what everyone else is doing and just do our own thing. When I was in junior high, I always wore these bright orange shoes. I got teased a lot because of them, but I didn't care. I loved them. I miss those shoes. I've never cared about the latest trends or what's popular. There's just so many other more important things for me to talk about. Like unlocking the final expansion to my stronghold on Drummond Cast in Star Wars The Old Republic. That thing costs 1,000,000 credits!
I've been hearing about this daily for a while now.
But it's this lack of caring about what society thinks that makes us more open to friendships with those who society looks down upon, like they do with us. We're more we're more accepting of those in the LGBTQ plus community because so many of us are in that community. We're more accepting of disabled people because so many of us are disabled. There are things that happen in the autistic community that drive me up the wall because they seem like they're based on arbitrary rules, like gatekeeping self-diagnosed autistics, or getting angry at someone because they prefer to be called a person with autism. I understand that most of us prefer identity first language. It's what I prefer. But what do we as a community gain when we attack others in our community because of what language they use to identify themselves? Not others in the community, just themselves. I could understand if they were trying to force others to use person first language, like what some neurotypicals will do. But that's not what's happening. I recently got flack for using person first language in my comic to better illustrate a point. It's the comic about gendered autism that I recently posted. And the final panel has the woman in the comic saying, "I don't have male autism, I have my autism." It was to show that this woman's autistic experience was specific to her and her alone. Why is this phrasing a problem? I think this is mostly an issue with the Facebook autistic community because that's the only time people come after me for it. Like, seriously, I lost followers over this. Just a couple. It's not like I got full on, canceled. I don't know. I was told that as an autistic advocate, it's my responsibility to only use identity first language because the community is fighting hard against neurotypicals who say that person first language is the only option. But I feel that as an autistic advocate, it's my responsibility to advocate for all autistics, no matter what language they use to identify themselves. I, I'm sorry. Uh, I went on a bit of a rant. Okay, I'm just still annoyed from that. Just let people identify themselves how they want to, okay? All right. Okay. Back to the positives.